experiences of nature-based solutions may also be some of the topics and opportunities for us to further explore. So this side event, we will introduce some of the experiences from China and Southeast Asia countries on community-based energy access and adaptation cases, and then to further discuss the topics with our representatives from different stakeholders, including from Africa foundations, philanthropic community, as well as the government from Africa countries, to see what are some of the opportunities for us to further dig into the potential collaborations between China and Africa on these topics. So first of all, we will actually have Ms. Qin Yan, who is the director of Green Strategy Center of Shanxi Coshare Innovation Institute of Energy and Environment, to introduce a bit more about China's experiences on developing solar energy. As the time difference is not very friendly for China, so she actually recorded a video presentation, and then we will play for that. I think we don't have a sound here.
Hello everyone, I'm Qin Yan, Shanxi Coshare Innovation Institute of Energy and Environment. Today, I will be sharing about China's solar PV development experiences and PV plans. Compared with other West countries, China's PV power plants started late, but since 2013, China's total installed capacity has been the first in the world for 9 years. China's PV development history can be divided into 4 stages. The first stages before 2009 can be seen from the graph. The domestic PV development was relatively slow. In the second stage, 2009 to 2013, PV power projects move rapidly towards marketization, with installed capacity maintaining an annual growth rate of more than 1 time. In the third stage, 2013 to 2018, diversified and large-scale development, during which distributed PV gradually developed. The fourth stage was after 2018, when China's PV began a phase of high-quality development. PV realized grid parity, which also play an important supporting role for China to achieve its dual carbon goals. Policy support is an essential driving force for the rapid development of PV in China. many including normative policies of industrial development, price and subsidy policies, tax policies. The renewable energy law promulgated in 2005 is the legal basis for the development of PV. The price and the subsidy price is an important policy to promote the development of PV, many include one-time build installation subsidy, electricity price subsidy, and exemption from government funds. In 2012 to 2013, the feed-in tariff for PV was reduced to 1 RMB. After 2014, the country further optimized the electricity fee subsidy method by dividing the country into 3 kinds of on-grid electricity prices, according to the solar resource conditions and the construction costs of each region. In 2021, electricity price subsidy has been cancelled for newly registered projects, including centralized PV, industrial and commercial distributed PV. Currently, China's PV power generation developed centralized and distributed mode side by side. Distributed PV breakthrough of 100 million kilowatts in 2021 accounted for 1/3 of all PV installed capacity. Meanwhile, China also promotes the PV plus mode from the beginning of the PV plus residential roof gradually developed into PV plus agriculture, PV plus fishery, PV plus forestry, and PV plus transport, and so on. The first case, located in Hainan province, is a combination of the PV power plant and agriculture. The project has an installed capacity of 100 megawatts with an annual power generation capacity of about 140 million kilowatts per hour and can achieve revenue of 42 million RMB. It's about $7 million. The crops to be grown are sweet potatoes and pineapples. This project stakeholders include investment enterprises, construction and operation enterprises, agricultural development companies, power grid companies, local government, and local residents. Among them, the Village Committee can opt stable land rent for this project, and the surrounding residents can opt economic remuneration by clean PV panels, weeding, and planting. This project can reduce coal burning by 40,500 tons of standard coal and carbon emissions by 91,900 tons per year, while providing more than 20 stable jobs and providing transient employment opportunities for more than 10 villages and 10,000 people in the surrounding area. It had good emissions reduction and social benefits. Then I will share about another case about PV plus. It's located in Shanxi province. Is a public welfare project with an installed capacity of 0.051 megawatt and an annual revenue of 56,300 RMB. The revenue from the project is mainly applied to 4 areas. The first area is to support the construction of small public welfare facilities, such as road repair. The second is to provide public welfare jobs and payment for local residents. The third is to carry out skills training such as welding, home economics, and so on to improve employment skills for local residents. And the next is to pay for the rental of PV roofs for farmers, ranging from roughly 500 to 1,500 RMB per household, depending on the size of roof. It's about $60 to $200. All in all, policy support and technology breakthroughs are the key factors driving the rapid development of PV in China. To achieve the dual carbon goals, China's PV development still faces some challenges, such as land use communities and the safety of the power grid. More innovative measures need to discuss and take together with all stakeholders and policymakers. Okay, that's all my sharing today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot for Chen Yan's presentation, and her presentation actually introduces mainly about China's solar PV development and how to combine the distributed solar power to help with the poverty alleviation process in China as perhaps future reference for off-grid energy access in Africa countries as well. So our next speaker will be my colleague, Ms. Nanying Cui. She will introduce a bit more about China's experiences at township level to do assessment of renewable energy potentials and development planning.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending our site event. I'm Nanying Cui from Global Environment Institute. Today, I'll be sharing assessment of the renewable energy plantation, potential of and the development planning at the township level in China. My presentation will cover what is the renewable energy implementation toolkit, why are we implementing solar PV planning projects in China, how are we applying REI toolkits to solar PV planning, one ongoing case about township level solar PV planning in Wenshui, Shanxi province, China, and finally, I will summarize our next steps. The typical steps to implement RE toolkits are as follows. Step 1, jurisdiction score assessment of the renewable energy zones to determine the best opportunity of solar, wind, biomass, and other RE resources to be found in the jurisdiction step. Step 2, selection of one or more RE resources and target local implementation areas based on the REZ assessment and planning needs. Step 3, characterization and selection of an RE technology and application for the select area. An RE technology application addressed both the what and the why aspect of the renewable energy. Step 4, energy supply and demand assessment within the target local implementation areas to ensure the high level of local seating reliability and region market potential. Fifth, finalizing mapping of the public and private resources for perhaps as well as detailed RE financial and implementation risk, return and social impact, and analyzed for the select technology application and financing merchandise select to meet the requirement of the upstream, intermediary, and downstream parties to implementation. The final steps, when you finish the 1 to 5 steps, you will guide development of the detailed RE implementation model, or you also call it business implementation model. Now, with China repeat economic development, Social development has shifted from production-oriented street. China is paying increasing attention to the ecological damage and environmental pollution arising from economic and social development, especially greenhouse gas emission and global warming, which have become a common challenge for the development of all mankind. The vast rural area are also an important source for GHG emission, and with Chinese two important strategies of carbon peaking and carbon neutrality, China urban and rural areas has become an important issue. The issue of the carbon emission in China's rural areas has become a top priority. How to plan and lay out reasonable renewable energy resources in China's cities and towns, and design the renewable business models to help Chinese cities and towns make the reasonable use of renewable energy resource to achieve the low carbon emission when be conducted to the revitalization of China's countryside and support achievement of China's 30-60 target. We use REI toolkits for RE planning at the township level in China have the 5 major steps, including the first one, GIS tools for RE potential assessment. The second, RE sector scoping or technology scoping. Third, technology application, MCA screen. Fourth, macroeconomic analysis for RE technology or RE policy. The last one is final merchandise and risk analysis. Give that all collaboration arms to first provide technology support for making local renewable energy plans to achieve the provincial level reduction target and green development. Second, analyze the market potential and business models to leverage the public and private investment in clean energy. Third, conduct a workshop about solar technology and provide operation and merchandise training for local people. Right now, we have 2 ongoing pilots in Shanxi province, China. In Wenshui County, we hope to make solar power rooftop planning to achieve local solar power development goal. In Wenshui, Caijia Township, we hope make the solar power planning and capacity building for official and local people. At the limited presentation time, I will share some analyzed result of the Wenshui County in Shanxi province. Shanxi province is the core capital in China. Resources-based economic and ecological disreputation has also become present problems in Shanxi. The core containing area takes up to 40% of the total area in Shanxi territory. Since 1950s, Shanxi province has been producing more than 17 billion tons of the core, which has made important contribution to China's economic and social development and ensuring national energy security. From the consumption side, the energy structure of Shanxi is also determined by core. In 1921, core takes up nearly 82% of the total energy consumption in Shanxi, which was much higher than China's average and significantly higher than the world average. The renewable only took up less than 13%. High core consumption lead to severe air pollution and high carbon emission. Under the press of the public demand and for clean air and also pressure from the climate change addressing decarbonization, the energy sector is also the way out for Shanxi province. This slide shows the solar power potential assessment for Wenshui County in Shanxi. From solar GIS data source, we get daily surface PV potential. In the top right picture, we analyze the urban built-up areas for the whole county by using GHS data. The picture on the left side, the land contents for Wenshui County, excluding the protected area, Terrain slopes greater than 15 degree, basic farmland, forest, grassland, wetland, and water bodies, and other land taps that are not suitable for PV project. Suitable rooftop solar power generation area can be found after these two layers are overlapped through the GIS technology. The right color shows the area within Wenshui County. They are suitable for solar power development. In the next step, we will continue to finalize the technology selection, business model design, and multiple training for 2 pilot solar PV planning projects. At the same time, the project will summarize and tell the story of Chinese rural revitalization to provide excellent case for another countries and regions in Southeast Asia and Africa to share and exchange experience. This is end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Naing, for the introduction about what GI has been doing in Shanxi province, which is actually a big coal-based province in China, and the effort that we have been doing with the township-level government in terms of helping them to plan on renewable energy development and solar rooftop potentials, and to see how we can do the energy transition from coal to solar power in the region. Next speaker will actually be Citra from Indonesia Partner Institute for Essential Services Reform. But very much unfortunately, she got tested COVID positive before her departure here. So she has to isolate it in Indonesia, and she has to then record a video presentation here. So we'll just play her presentation virtually.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to be here virtually. Thank you, Global Environmental Institute, for inviting me to discuss the state of energy access in Indonesia. My name is Marlistia Citraningrum, and I'm from Institute for Essential Services Reform in Indonesia. Just a little bit of introduction to Institute for Essential Services Reform, or IESR. We are a think tank based in Jakarta, Indonesia, and we work on the field of energy and environment. If you want to know more about our work, kindly visit our website as displayed in the slide. Now, talking about energy access in Indonesia is represented by these two pictures. So basically, we have a very well-lit, good electricity access in one city or in one part of Indonesia. And then we also have many locations, especially in the rural areas, that have a very limited access to electricity, even for lightings. So based on official statistics, Indonesia is currently at a 99% electrification ratio. That's the indicator that we use for energy access. But there's always this anecdote saying that the energy to power one big shopping mall in Jakarta, the capital city, is often sufficient to power an entire small town somewhere else in Indonesia. So there is a gap of quality and how much energy is received by people in different areas in Indonesia. And talking about official numbers, we have this indicator called electrification ratio, which is used exclusively for electricity access, and it is defined as the ratio of households connected to quote-unquote lighting source compared to all households in the country. So because it does not incorporate any definition on the productive use of energy or how the electricity is used for everyday activities, then it is clearly highlight how inequality exists, because no other definition related to productive use of energy is incorporated in the electrification ratio. It focuses solely on the lighting source and the connection. Also, there is another indicator called electrified village, but it only counts if there is one or more household in the village is connected to lighting source, then the whole village is considered electrified village. This is why we have been working to see beyond 100% paradigm in Indonesia, because the indicator that we are currently use does not represent how energy access is being delivered to people, how it will benefit the most of the community using the energy, and how we can improve the quality of energy access received by the people, not only from the lighting source, but also how the energy is used for productive uses, for education purposes, or for health and other activities that can improve the livelihood of the people. We have been working for advocating this change of paradigm since at least 2012. We provide several research and analysis on the beyond connection paradigm, and we have this pilot project on how to have a bottom-up energy delivery approach in collaboration with the CAFOD and IIED. That we call the energy delivery model, which has a toolkit to plan with the community what kind of energy access they need and how they will use the energy for their needs or to improve their livelihood in the community. Now, the energy delivery model approach is basically a proper energy delivery system in which we incorporate the energy delivery or energy provision with socio-cultural context and also the enabling environment that is needed from the surrounding community and every relevant stakeholder in the energy provisions. So we want to make sure that the finance, the production or generation of energy, the distribution of energy is being talked, discussed, and owned by the community. That is why it is very important to incorporate that into the socio-cultural context on how energy is managed, on how the stakeholders have relationship with other stakeholders to ensure that sustainability of the energy access that we delivered will be very good in the long term. And the enabling environment that we also want to make sure is that because this is not a one-time grant that given to the people, but this is something that has to answer their need, and the improvement of the energy access given to the community is aligned with their long-term needs and how they will make an active participation in the operation and maintenance, and also probably the expansion of energy access provided to the community. The energy delivery model approach toolkit has this 6 steps design process to ensure that there is inclusivity, there is a thorough investigation of the starting point and baseline of energy needs in the community, and also to build understanding with the community, because we want to separate needs and wants. What people needs in terms of energy access is often different from the wants. Probably they want a refrigerator because they see that this is a good electronic equipment they see on TV or somewhere else in the neighborhood, but is it something that they really need? So building the understanding in the community is really important so that the energy access that we plan together can deliver the most impact for them. And from the 6 steps, we also want to ensure that the optimization of the solution that we propose together with the community is actually answering all the needs and have the enabling environment that they can provide, be that in terms of financial support from the village government or involvement and active participation from the community in the development of the infrastructure on the operation or maintenance of the energy facilities that come into the village. And so we pilot this approach in a very remote village in eastern Indonesia. It's located 55 kilometers from the nearest city capital, and it's only grid connected in early 2021. Back in 2016, when we went there, there is no source of energy apart from a very simple solar lamp that's not sufficient. And what we found out with the community when we mapped the needs that they really want to answer with the energy access coming to their community is these 3 priorities. So it's not basic services. It's not merely about lighting sources, but first it's about the increased income from coffee production, because they are mainly farmers and they want to be more productive in terms of farming activities. They want to reach a better market, but it also means they need to improve the quality of the products and the agricultural practice that they have. They also want better household electricity, and also one thing that struck the most is they want to improve education outcome for their kids, because there is this small elementary school in the village, but they don't have electricity access to provide for good audiovisual education technique or creative teaching. So they wanted to be a part of this energy access provision in the village. And what we learned also from this pilot project is that we often misidentify the problems simply by assuming, oh, they only need simple household lighting. But in fact, they actually need something else, including energy access for productive uses, and also energy access for education, and sometimes energy access for health. So we need to understand that misidentification of problem often leads to wrong solution, and the bottom-up energy delivery approach will try to ensure exactly what the needs of the community. And we want to ensure the active participation of everyone involved, be that village government, regency level government, senior groups, farmer groups, women groups, because we want the energy access solutions that's being taught in the community is based on the needs and the voices of all the relevant stakeholders involved, and in a way that will also be ensuring that it is impactful and sustainable, because everyone has a say and everyone has involvement in the planning of the energy provision. And so right now we're still working with the community to provide all the energy access that they need. So we have together with them already installed 5 kilowatt peak of solar panel in the school, because the community thinks this is of the utmost importance. They want to provide better education system and condition for their kids. So with the solar panel, there will be more education activities that can involve audiovisual materials, creative teaching technique, and also they can access a lot of information that's previously cannot be accessed without electricity. And the pilot is still ongoing. We're working with farmers group to provide training to improve their agricultural practices, and hopefully in the near future also have some kind of installation of solar panel or other sources of energy to help them increase their production, and also to have better processing of the coffee or the cocoa. And we also monitor and listen to the stories that's been happening since 2016, because changes occur differently, be that individual level for the students or the parents, at school for the school community, and also collectively as a community. We see that these renewables now are perceived as reliable energy sources for them, and they're very willing to work together to work with several stakeholders to provide a better energy access to the community. And we hope that this pilot will serve as an example to replicate the bottom-up energy approach in many locations in Indonesia, and also to draw the lesson learned that when energy access is being talked and discussed within the community and planned with them, then it can benefit the most of them, it can deliver the most impact for the people. Thank you very much. I hope it helps in discussion later on.
Thanks for Citra's presentation introducing IESI's experiences in eastern part of Indonesia to conduct participatory community-led energy access projects, and also in combination with livelihoods development and capacity building. I think she also mentioned a pretty crucial element of how to do community-led projects, that is to be inclusive and to be involve more stakeholders and to focus on the needs from the communities. Next one will be our Myanmar partner, Mr. Momo Dan. He will actually introduce the practices of our community-based mangrove conservation and livelihoods projects as an example of community-based climate adaptation and resilience for coastal communities. Also, unfortunately, due to health reasons, he's based in Myanmar and he cannot join us on site, but we will have him virtually on the screen.
Hello, everyone. I am Mama Tan, Myanmar Forest Association, Myanmar, and I will be presenting just 10 minutes. First, I would like to discuss on this slide. These are the sustainable development goals for the current situation of Myanmar, especially the mangrove area. And these 6 SDG goals are in play right now. And concerning with the Myanmar mangrove situation, this is a slide I have done after the infamous nugget storm of 2008. You can quite well see that the Myanmar mangrove area, especially the delta mangrove from 1975 to 2008, changes very rapidly. And I must tell you that the main cause of these daily changes are poverty. And especially this slide, the busiest cycle of environmental degradation, disaster risk management, which we have used. When I say we, it is Dr. Nizam Muhammad of the United Nations. We have a busiest cycle of environmental degradation, which increases vulnerability to nature results. Result in the nature disaster catastrophes such as the 2008 storm, Nugget, and it further causes again further environmental degradation, increased vulnerability, more nature hazards, more nature disasters. So this vicious cycle is the what is philosophy of Tandaya Sake. So where to get this one? And there is a characteristic which is the local people participation, and we MFA together with the support of the IUCN, Global Environmental Institute, GEI, Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, CEPF, about 4 projects, 7 years in the Tinizari region of Make District, Palwa Township, Pipinguji region. And we go on the sustainability of the local people, ecosystem, ecological conservation, and community development, community-based conservation and development, sustainable community conservation, and this area, it has still a lot of good mangrove that and especially this project with the DI is the introduction of the sustainable community conservation concession agreement CCCA system and upgrade the national mangrove forest to community forest through protected public forest in 3 ASEAN in the region, Myanmar. It is very unique and specific project goal to prepare management of community policy and attain CF community policy certificate through protected public forest PPF formal process. In the objective, the CCCA has been initiated successfully and also practical experience given to the local people to solve the regional issue, including wildlife trade, deforestation, and climate change. And then the most important one is improve the livelihoods of communities by supporting livestock, fishery, home garden, and ecotourism through mainstreaming community forestry in the restoration of the mangrove ecosystem. And through this project, we have successfully made final demonstration of assessment of the critically endangered species and unrecorded species for flora and fauna through the local people exchange and also the gap planting and staking. Such activities formerly has been under the government government-led programs. Now these are done by the local people themselves. We have done this is a record of the assessing workshop. And through the participatory community forestry management procedure, we have the village consultation meeting. And you will see the representation of the gender issue. Also, have I see the observation trip and also this kind of very important activities such as petroleum. So my last slide is current program. Now there have been so many gaps between the project sponsorship and now our countries this project area has been greatly distant and illegal company big industries they are reappearing again. When we have been about to perform patrolling our staff and local people, we have greatly reduced the illegal activities. But now, the programs are so great, so great. So I must say that such critically endangered species such as Bulgaria Shanxi has been affected. So I want to emphasize here again that in this time of crisis, no protesting and conservation activity can be performed right now. Therefore, we suggest and also want to tell the world, tell you that even if whether it is small or medium or large scale in terms of finance, we request your supporting project in a continuous manner in this area, in Myanmar, in the mangrove area. So I have turned to my long time. This is a short one myself during the post-assessment nugget cycle effects. And you can see there are three kinds of damage. Here you can see totally destroyed. Here is the resilience, rehabilitation. The plant is trying to rehabilitate itself, setting out the leaf from the stem. And this species, the Gambela sonarisha, seem to have no effect from the storm at all. So even now, in our country, we are still in this kind of different stages now. We want to regroup ourselves, regroup our ecosystem, regroup and decrease the vulnerability to the hazard, not to become disaster, to cut down the vicious circuit of poverty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Momo Dan, about the presentation. Actually, Myanmar Forest Association was one of our strong partners in Myanmar, and we have been working with them since 2017 to protect mangroves in southern part of Myanmar using the community-based conservation and agreement models, and also to help curb the illegal logging of mangroves in that areas and improve local livelihoods. But I mean, the situation in Myanmar has been pretty difficult since last year's military coup, and so their works have been also got suspended for a long term. And we do hope that the work can be continued as soon as possible. So next speaker will be also my colleague Jing Wei. Her presentation will be on community-based participation in forest and wildlife conservation in the context of climate change.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jing Wei, and I am Senior Program Officer from the Global Environmental Institute. And tonight I will be talking about community participation in forest and wildlife conservation in the context of climate change. Increasingly in the COPs, not only at UNFCCC, but also the Convention on Biological Diversity, there's increasing discussions around synergy between biodiversity conservation and climate change, and that is how to adapt biodiversity conservation in a changing climate. Because there are so many interrelated topics like forest. Our colleagues talked about mangrove conservation, and tonight I will be talking about forest and wildlife conservation. In fact, in our community-based conservation work by GEI on the ground with the community members, we have been observing increasing need for consideration of the climate change topics into our work. So tonight I will share two cases. And my colleague already explained a little bit about our approach on community-based conservation, but I just want to once again explain what we mean by community-based conservation. So for biodiversity conservation, we want to engage and encourage and empower the community, local community members through awareness raising and through technical trainings, and working, also encouraging them to work with local conservation authorities to preserve the biodiversity that they live around. And in return, as a way of compensation or award or incentive, we NGOs help them to find ways for livelihoods and economic development so that their livelihoods are not sacrificed. These several approaches, for example, using rotation fund, giving them energy access, and also some of the communities, they have local agriculture or handicraft produce, and we help them to get market access for economic development. So my first example is community-based forest conservation and climate change integration. And my example would be the forest conservation and clean energy project we carried out a while ago, back in 2014 and 15. It was in a small village called the TBK village in Myanmar. So the initial goal of the project was to help encourage community to protect the local forest. And through initial feasibility analysis, we realized it was local deforestation was a part of it was contributed by local people using cutting trees for fuel woods to cook their food. So so to solve this problem, we leveraged a donation of 193 clean cook stoves, which helped them reduce 1/3 of the felling of the tree twigs for cooking, and it helps with improving the air quality. It's healthier for the local residents, and at the same time, it's helping with climate mitigation. That's that little part they contributed, and of course, along with the donation, we also promoted forest protection awareness raising to these local people. And moreover, to further incentivize climate adaptation and sustainable livelihoods for these villagers, in the same donation package that we leveraged, we also donated 180 household solar lights and a 1.1 kilowatt photovoltaic water pump for the village to get clean water, and also help them establish a community development fund, which helped with their livelihoods and also climate adaptation. So this this was one example that we worked on a small project in Myanmar, and it actually helped gave an example for the Chinese government's South-South Climate Fund to Myanmar in the later years. So my second case is community-based wildlife conservation and climate change integration. It's not usually quite intuitive how wildlife conservation can be related to climate change. But in this one project we started 2 years ago in southwestern part of China, in Xishuangbanna, Yunnan province, we started off with the goal to encourage local communities to help with counter wildlife trafficking across the border between China and Laos. So after doing feasibility analysis again in the local villages, we thought about this project is actually also helping encouraging local communities to conserve wildlife, including Asian elephants and other wildlife near the borders. And of course, there are two reasons for the loss of wildlife species in the area. One is loss of habitat, and that is also partly due to climate change. And the second reason is poaching by local people for trafficking and for selling it to the market. And usually these are perpetrated by local villagers who are in a poor living condition, and their agriculture produce cannot really help them gain enough sufficient living. And this is also partly due to climate change. So again, we started working with a local conservation authority, the Xishuangbanna National Nature Reserve. Together we helped guide one local village to participate in protecting wildlife near the border. We signed a tripartite agreement, the community conservation concession agreement. So the villagers, in this agreement, the villagers will participate in forest ranging organized by the local authority to deter any poachers and also record the data of local wildlife species to help with conservation. And as a return, the villagers will benefit from a rotation fund that we help them establish. It has been a year past the fund's establishment, and the local villagers, they use the fund for their agricultural activities like rice production and peppers. Some of them use it for livestock raising. And after 1 year, actually in August this year, it has been 1 year for this rotation fund, and all of the villagers who borrowed the money were able to return what they borrowed with an interest. And they are rotating this fund once again this year to continue the livelihoods. But actually, I want to talk about, so after 1 year of operation, we went back to the village to carry out an evaluation. And the villagers responded positively to how they were incentivized to be more active in producing their agricultural products because of this fund, because they learn and also they were more active in promoting the knowledge of conserving wildlife to their neighbors, to their families. But also we are meeting new challenges of, some of them raise the question that their agricultural field actually are being destroyed and threatened sometimes by the wildlife appearing in the villages. Because of their conservation activities, there are more wildlife in the area, and I guess human-wildlife conflict and this dynamic is a new challenge they want to they're willing to solve. And to us, we think these kind of community projects, it's not just a 1 year or 2 year limited time. It goes on, and there's new problem, and we really want to help them to solve these new problems that's also related to the climate change. So just to summarize and end, I guess I want to raise this new interrelated challenges and opportunities between climate change and biodiversity conservation. And we are focusing on the communities. I think the communities, especially those in the most economic disadvantages, are being threatened. Their lives are being threatened by climate change. But also the biodiversity, the wildlife species, the forests that we want to protect, they are also being the victims of climate change. So both of them need help on climate adaptation. And, but at the same time, the community members themselves are a massive force. I think they are the ones that can really help on the ground with conservation and also climate mitigation. So I think financial investments for climate change could really be used in more smart ways to integrate all these problems and find and integrate integrated solutions to these problems. And that is my presentation tonight. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Xingwei, for introducing different cases of community-led participation in forest and wildlife conservation. We've actually heard different cases and experiences from China and in Myanmar and Indonesia about energy access and community-led adaptation in different aspects. And then I guess when some are actually experiences from policy levels and implementation levels, but also some of them also mentioned about the challenges of really doing the community-based works. And then I guess there could be some learning for future works in Africa, perhaps. And so next, I will invite Dr. Wang Yi, Vice Chair of National Expert Panel on Climate Change of China and also Senior Advisor of Chinese Delegation to COP27 to chair the panel discussion sessions on how we can learn for Africa and what are potential next steps and opportunities that we can do. Please.
Thank you, Jilin, for your introduction. And my name is Wang Yi from Chinese Academy of Sciences. So the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. So it's my pleasure to be here to share, our experience. Especially in the previous session, we learned a lot from experience from China and also Southeast Asian countries on some renewable development and also some conservation experience, especially including the mangrove and also the conservation concession. So in this session, the topic is a requirement of a potential implication for Africa. So in this session, we have 3 panelists. The first one is Mr. Temba. He's a diplomat from Cameroon. So please come to the table. Yeah, please, Temba. The second panelist is Ms. Faten Agat. She is from Africa Climate Foundation. Please come to the back. The last one is Ms. Nan Li from Children's Investment Fund Foundation, the SIV based on London. Welcome, all the panelists. For this panel discussion, I think the first one I ask every panelist to give a talk briefly about your perspective about Africa's requirements on energy access and community adaptation, and also the key challenges and barriers, and what we could do for the future across national learning and cooperation. So, please, maybe, I'm not sure who will go first. Maybe Mr. Tamba, you can go first. Just to give a brief introduction. I'm not sure. Here or no? You can use the microphone.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk. Once again, good evening and welcome to this COP village. I have to recommend the fact that Cameroon and China now have been very good friends, and this is a friendship that has greatly helped the collaboration between the two countries. So I want to seize this opportunity again to thank the Chinese government through the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, thank our partners too, the Global Environmental Institute, with whom we have been collaborating for a while now. I also wish to acknowledge the fact that JEI has been a very great support to activities of Cameroon. And now, looking at the energy sector, we know that a part of what has to do with community forest and wildlife resources, the Republic of China as a whole has been very active in other fields like infrastructure and many other sectors in Cameroon. And to tell you the truth, you know, when I used to be in China, and the few words I used to learn is "fei chambang," meaning that it's good, and we really appreciate. Now, if I have to be specific, is there something I have to discuss about specifically, Mr. Moderator?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's true that I'm more concerned about the livelihood of communities, especially to the fact that most of them always believe that the forest is theirs. So, especially in Africa, you know, Africans have this tradition that when there is a forest close to them, everything that is inside that forest has to be theirs. That is why they believe that all the proceeds, all the resources in the forest, if they are sold or if they are taken by government, whatever proceeds should come to them. So I think what we need, the first thing that we need in terms of financial investment is to first of all educate the communities. It's true, forest resources are for the communities, but they have to be educated. And I think that the best way to educate them is to create centers, vocational training centers, that we can teach them on how to manage their resources, even if you give them, because you know at times they always say you can give a child money, but if he doesn't have knowledge, if he doesn't have training on how to use money, there's nothing he can do with it. So I think the financial investment that will be concentrated on these communities should be geared towards creating vocational training centers that can educate them, that can teach them how to be useful whenever they receive this investment. And I think local community members, as my previous speaker said, should benefit from a rotation fund, which should support the household agriculture for livelihood. Yes, that is a fact. But now, what I think, and as I believe that should be taken into consideration, is how do these communities learn how to use the rotation fund? And as I propose as a solution is that we should concentrate on educating them, training them on how to use the funds that will be made available with them. So the fact is, concentrating on training, concentrating on vocational training is what should really be our focus. And communities, as we know, are a mass force in both conservation and climate mitigation. That's true. It still goes back to what I just said. They need to be trained. We need to create more centers, more vocational training centers, so as to educate them. Because you can't give money to someone who can't know what to do with the money. But training is very important. And I think that is what we should be looking at right now. We should be looking at for the future. And remember the theme of this COP27, when we met in meetings, in pre-COP meetings, we were so worried about the promises that are being made here. You remember last year there was a lot of promise on funds that will be allocated to indigenous communities, but till now nothing has been done. So we believe that when we leave from here, most of the promises that have been made, most of the promises that were made last year and this year, our hope and our concern is that most of those promises should be realized. And as for the financial investment that is geared or that is anticipated, I think that, as you said, that financial investment should be used in very smart ways so that we all can come together and integrate possible solutions to help some of these communities. I think I should not speak much. Maybe my other colleagues will have something to say, and if an idea comes up, I'll be able to take the floor again.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Presenter.
I have a very short question to you.
Good.
You
Okay.
just mentioned about GEI, the Global Environment Institute.
Yes.
It's a Chinese NGO.
Yes.
So do you think for Chinese NGO could play very important roles in Cameroon?
Exactly.
Because we have a very, very different conditions.
I know,
Yeah,
I understand.
okay.
Yes, Chinese NGO they can act as a facilitator. Because you know that our policies are different. Chinese policies and Cameroon policies in terms of administrations are very different. At times, NGOs play the part of facilitators. Mm-hmm. Even in Cameroon, at times to get to officials because of the policies put in place, it's a bit complicated. But NGOs have this great role that they always play because they can easily play advocacy, they can advocate, and they can easily play the middleman that is between the Chinese government and between the Cameroon government. So to answer you directly, yes, they can play a very important role of advocacy, a very important role of facilitation.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe Fatin, please.
Thank you very much. And first let me thank the colleagues from GEI for inviting us to contribute. My intention today was not to refer to conservation. It's not my area of expertise. I had more wanted to reflect on the first part. But listening to the colleagues from GEI's presentation, it's extremely useful, I think, to see the experiences from different parts, and I think there's a lot, I think, that needs to be done. I think the space to exchange more of these experiences across regions, from Asia, Africa, and I would even add South America, on some of these efforts is quite important. And there I just wanted to highlight also, because the question of transboundary conservation came up, that if one looks at the African continent, particularly in the southern African region where there are large conservation areas running across countries. There's one of the largest, which is the transfrontier conservation areas in the southern Africa region. Which actually is quite interesting from not only from the point of view of collaboration between countries to ensure that on the one hand we have conservation and on the other hand we do have collective efforts to secure really the livelihoods of people. And as my colleague next to me just mentioned, we often struggle, and I'll come back to this question just now as well. One of the key challenges really that we have across the continent is that of finance, and how do we finance all these efforts? And in the case of the transfrontier conservation area in Southern Africa, the countries worked with the approach of pooled funding, and they've established, in fact, just last year, a $100 million fund, $100 million fund specifically dedicated to support the activities around conservation in this area. So I just wanted to flag it as well to say that certainly on the African continent there's a very long history of conservation, also positive experience in terms of conservation. And the learning, I think, is also one in both directions. But to go back to actually the intention or the focus rather of my presentation, of my intervention today was more on the first part related to renewables, to the rollout. And we have a huge challenge at the continent. Close to 600 million people still do not have access to electricity. There's a huge gap between most electrified regions are in North Africa and a little bit in Southern Africa. But in between, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. There are experiences or attempts to introduce off-grid deployment. Currently, around 60 million Africans are connected off-grid, and in fact, the bulk of that 60 million sits in this region where there is limited access. And I think there's been positive strides made in terms of trying to increase off-grid, but it's far from being enough. And the need to scale up and bring these additional solutions is extremely critical. I think one of the speakers, the colleague from Indonesia, I believe, raised the question of what problem are we trying to resolve? And I would fully agree with that. I think one of the key challenges in the African continent is that we tend to only focus on household access to electricity. But we still also have a huge issue in terms of productive use, where countries will need to find stable sources of energy generation to be able to continue their industrialization path in a greener manner. But that is also needed from an economic growth point of view. Now, unfortunately, we're in, as I said, a situation where finance is extremely scarce. And just to, again, emphasize on the point that my colleague made earlier, it's very important that we leave this COP with something concrete, beyond pledges. I think a lot of pledges were made, but we need to deliver. We need to deliver, I just maybe to add some figures, we have, I mean, if I take the GCF, only 30% of the projects that African countries and stakeholders have submitted for funding have been approved up to 2017. And we are already one of the regions that has the least access to finance, so that constrains it even more. One of the key challenges we also have is that there's a strong push to say the finance needs to be private sector led, private sector money. And yet only 1.6% of the total funding that we have had in Africa for adaptation came from the private sector. So we need other modes of operating. And I think there, particularly when it comes to issues such as infrastructure resilience. We do feel that, for instance, countries such as China have a lot of experience there from which we can learn. Being a developed country, looking at how the resources were able to be mobilized, including domestically, to be able to respond to your real needs is quite important. Just my last point to say that the interest, and perhaps to just go back to the questions raised earlier in terms of energy, the challenge is not in Africa is not that there isn't capacity. I mean, if I take solar PV, the technical potential for the continent is at 7,900 gigawatts. And, you know, if I'm to add wind, it's around an additional 461 gigawatts. So the potential is there, but we need to unlock it, and unlocking it will depend on that finance, and structuring that finance, learning from how other regions have done it, is quite critical to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Fatin. I also have a very short question to you. Tamba just mentioned about financial gap. And I think, maybe we need more money. And I'm not sure in the near future whether you have some cooperation opportunity with GEI, because, two funds can give more help to the Cameroon or other African countries. Do you think it's possible or not?
I think certainly. I think this is one of the core debates, and I refer to my colleague here. It's one of the core debates and one of the main asks for African countries, even at this COP. It's been for a while, but I think the emphasis is now. So the simple answer to your question is yes, certainly. I think cooperation is welcomed, as long as it's aligned, of course, to the realities of the country. The other question, I mean, if I take partners such as GEI, it's in the form of technical assistance, technical support, which remains very important. I mean, it is one of the challenging areas. We tend to focus often on capital mobilization, but the preparation phase to get to that capital mobilization is often underfunded. Mm-hmm. And so that technical know-how, that support in these early stages is quite critical. Thank you.
Thank you much. I move to Ms. Linan.
Thank you for having me, and also I think the returns, I really agree with two colleagues from Africa because they share their perspective about the challenges in Africa, so they are more, I think, I really believe their thinkings, but also I think I can provide some from different angles to share with people. First, I'm thinking that energy access is actually at the heart of development. It's not purely energy part, because there will be negative impacts on a range of development indicators: health, education, poverty reduction. We can name a lot of them. So I think the provide energy access to the 600 million people here, it's really about justice. So that is the first point I would like to mention. And in terms of challenge, I think this may not only happen in Africa. It's not the problem in Africa. It's common challenges for energy access. For example, I can name like last mile connecting. This happens everywhere. Even in China, we provide the whole country with energy access until 2015. So it's not, we have a lot of experiences by providing access to remote areas. So I think how we can provide those last minute connecting is especially in Africa, because there's a tremendous investment needed for the grid. So I think off-grid power PV colleagues from GEI already share those solutions in China. I think that is one of the kind of affordable solutions we can provide to the household applies to the normal people. So that is the first. And second, I'm also thinking we were talking about that people without energy access may need lower cost and higher efficiency solutions. But I'm thinking the cost is not about product, because we need products with high quality. But thinking about the people living in the rural areas, I think the operation and maintenance of cost is very high. So a right business model is needed to helping people to have not only the rural people, but also the businessmen, like the Chinese private sectors, they don't have those sailing network, and also don't have the capacity to maintain these products that will not benefit to the user in Africa, but also the reputation of Chinese products. So I think those business model is very important, not only thinking about export, but operation in the continent. And a third one is the financing part. I think you already mentioned that, but I was just thinking about not those billions or millions of investments, but thinking about inclusive financing. Colleagues from GI or Indonesia also share that. Right, we provide the capacity of local community. We trust them. We provide the needed inclusive financing to help them to get solution. So I think this is mainly challenges I can observe, and also trying to. I think I don't have the right answers all these, but I think we can explore those kind of solutions as a first step.
Okay, thank you. And also the short question to you, as a foundation in UK, do you think the third-party cooperation is very important? Maybe China, UK, and to support, give technology support or capacity building in other African countries?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Actually, CIF is headquartered in London, but we operate in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in India, and also in China. So we think we make a global organization providing solutions to the world. So I also quite absolutely, Dr. Wang, you are right. I think this problem cannot solve by one country, one continent. It's global products. So CIF is really interested to collaborate with colleagues in Africa and also colleagues in China to build those triangle collaboration. Either from business perspective is more sustainable, supply chain and also the business parties. But also, I think this is exchange, knowledge sharing, lessons learned sharing is important for all of us, because China, I would say we are still a developing country, but also we suffered those underdeveloped process not very long ago, and also there are still some poor areas, poor people in China still. So I think this is a lot of experiences can be shared, and we share those. As my colleagues in Cameroon said, it's a friendship. So we will continue those dialogues and support, facilitate the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you much for your response. A final round of question. Several days ago, COP14 of Ramsar Convention just have a decision. Would like to establish an international mangrove center in Shenzhen. So how this kind of center or related organization could play more important roles for Africa country or other developing countries? What's your recommendations? Yeah, whatever your three could.
I just heard this news, but I think there's no details disclosed about how these centers will operate. But I think in general, we welcome those kind of commitments from China. Is really, we go into the center of these global stage. We should provide more solutions to the world. That is expected by our colleagues in Africa, in South Asia. For an international NGO like CIF, I think this is a good platform for us. In general, I don't know the details of that, to understand more through those multilateral dialogue, collaboration, to find ways that we can make contribution.
So, Ms. Fatin?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the details are yet to be seen, and often the devil is in those details. But I think certainly a welcomed move, and engaging, I think, with those types of processes is encouraging, and yeah, we welcome it as well. I think we're in a similar situation as the CIF colleagues there.
So, Tamba.
I would definitely not say something different from my colleagues. First of all, they are women. When a woman speaks, they manually accept. So I'll go to their direction. And I think, as they say it, it's a good move, and nothing has been disclosed. All we should be expecting is that the way forward should be beneficial to all of us, to all the parties included. So I think all we have to do is to wait and see, because if the clauses are well known, all our wish is that the clauses should be beneficial. There should be a kind of mutual agreement, because it's all about a collaboration. It's all about something that has to be put in place for the advantage or to the advantage of all the parties concerned. So I think we should be positive, and we should wait. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, because the time is very limited. Thank you, our panelists, your insight, your thought, and your experience and the comments. So also thank you, the participants, for your attention, and I would like to close this session and move to our Dr. Jiqiang Zhang to give a summary of this side event. Oh, please, Mr. Zhang. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Professor Wang Yi, for your introduction. Yeah, it's hard to conclude this session because there's so few people, but there's so much ideas and such a big problem, yeah, in front of us. How can we draw any conclusions from this? I think this is not my job. This is a job for all of us. Although GEI has pioneered community-based climate action as a Chinese NGO, which the program has covered 13 countries in 3 continents, including Southeast Asia, South Asia, Africa, and also even extended to Brazil, to Latin American countries. Although there's a 47 project going on the ground, although there's many communities already benefited from this, although there are projects which has been very successful, as you heard from our Indonesian colleagues, and they have been informed their government commitment on solar and on renewable energy is far from adequate. Because by their exercise, together with GI, they found the potential is 8 times as high for renewable energy as the government committed. And also GI's project also benefited, for example, our colleagues in Vietnam. They also informed their government what's the community need. So the whole approach is about our view about climate action needs 3 levels, joint actions: the government commitment, government action; the business commitment, business action; and community-based actions, which including local government actions. These 3 actions should be integrated into one. And the way we do that is through bottom-up, to integrate the 3 actions into one. So the community will tell the government what you need to do more and what we really need. Yeah? So they inform the policymakers in 2 things: what we really need on climate change actions. Second, what you need to do more, and commitment more on climate actions. This is one. Second, this program, together with communities, local NGOs, we should inform the business community what you can do here. What's the business opportunity here? And this is a big task. because you had to integrate the programs into a bankable projects. So therefore, the business community can jump in because most of the renewable energy either too small or too risky for business participations. So how to do innovative financing to have integration of projects into a large-scale projects, so the business can take it on, and how to avoid those investment risks by a mixed financing to bring in philanthropic money, government money, aid money into a mixed financing projects that make the investors feel comfortable, and then they put the money in. And lastly, how to educate the communities, as my colleague from Cameroon just mentioned, how can help them to manage their small revolving and to continue to develop their program need, their project need, and fulfill energy transition. We call justice transitions. So all this job is the big umbrella of the community project job. This is a huge job, need a lot of knowledge, need a lot of innovation, and need a lot of effort. I heard from Myanmar, from our Myanmar colleagues, as well as Cameroon colleagues, and many others from Indonesia as well, we need money. What the money they're talking about is the pre-financing development money, including training, including program development, financial package development, business models, and bring engaging business sector and the government into this effort. So this needs philanthropic community to develop significant amount of resources in support of this community-based effort, which is very much lacking in the climate actions field. Yeah? So here I'm very happy that our colleagues from CIF and from Africa Climate Fund, and as well as the others which are unable to come in, but they're already informed, like Oak Foundation, like Sequoia, we just talked with them, yeah, and many other foundations that we, climate foundations, Bloomberg Philanthropies, yeah, and Rockefeller Brother Fund, and many of our grants already very well informed about this action. They are ready to jump in with much larger scale funding. So I cannot promise anything, but I believe that together with our colleagues in our counterpart in Africa, Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Latin American countries, we are able to deliver down to the road. I'm looking for 3 years to 5 years down to the road to have a tangible result to deliver to the global climate communities. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.